using, I don't have to be distracted with sending that.
All right, no problem.
All right.
All
Hi,
right.
everybody.
Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are here for another great discussion. We're gonna be talking about the storytelling. You know, we're gonna be getting deep into how to craft a great sports story with the one and only Trishana. And I could do her own introduction, but I think she'll do it better than me. So, please tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself to us.
So good evening, everyone. Like he said, I'm Trishana McGowan, award-winning sports journalist and a former athlete. Now a freelance sports journalist and sports content creator. I don't think there's nothing better to be said. Once you have sports at the top, kind of set the tone. I think that we are a cut above many in journalism because everything with sports is so live. Like you're in the moment. Whether they're just swimming, a track meet, a football match, it is live. We don't be bringing delayed, events. You can record it like we're doing now, and then you showcase it afterwards. But sports is that girl. So being a former athlete, I think kind of helped to ease me a bit into sports journalism. And I never knew what, the road would have been like, but I took it on with all kinds of bravery because that's what we do as athletes. Even when you're a former athlete, you still carry that mindset over to adulthood. It never leaves you. So that's pretty much it, with my background as a former athlete, it really helped to ease my way in it and did so. I won't say easy, but there was nothing easy about it because it's a male-dominated space, which we'll get into at some point in time. But for me, it was just always knowing who I am, owning what I do, and working within who I am. I don't want to be like Jessica or Andrew or Rutha, and I was always comfortable with Trishana McGowan and my capabilities, even while still looking to develop. So that's my introduction.
Can you tell us a little bit about your history in competing and when it started and what?
Oh wow. So I went to Warner Primary, and then I did track and field and netball. I really loved netball, but then I was always, because both seasons go hand in hand. It was always a case where I was left to choose. But then in primary school, still balancing, I did both. I then went on to St. Andrew High School for girls, the one and only on 10 Cecilia Avenue, right at Alfred Street, so. So then I went to Andrews and then I did track and field. And even then, while at Andrews, with track and field, I still wanted to do netball. So I would sneak away to netball practice. And then our coach, myself and a couple others on our track team, we really loved netball coming from primary and prep school, doing both sports. We thought as first, second formers, yeah man, we can do the same thing. No. More is not required of you as an adult, as a teenager, I should say, versus in your younger years. So then I still wanted to do both. Like I said, I would sneak away to netball practice, and then our track coach, you would see him coming to the netball court for us, and then the netball coach would be like, "I thought you had said that in the court, say only can come," when in fact he didn't. But we didn't tell her any lies, We don't want to say, "Oh, you all lied." No, we never said to her, "Oh, he said we can." We just showed up. And then when he would come to the netball court, then we're like, "Oh, sorry, we forget to tell you that, we're only here for a bit." But that could not work because, as you know, with sports, you have to be committed. It requires commitment. It requires training, and doing part of training will never be sufficient to get the success at any level in sports. So then by really settling down into third form and so on, I had to really make a decision if I was going to dabble into netball and track and field, or I'm going to, which I had to choose, like I said. I don't think I was like much of a choice. No, I'm thinking about it. So I went to track and field. I'm not much of a team sport girl, even though I try and I love it, because it's much tougher to get a scholarship in the team sports. You have to be so exceptional and the standout. So I chose track and field because I saw girls at my high school who were not extremely talented, but they were talented. They had talent, and their academics, and they were able to acquire track and field scholarships overseas. And then I was inspired by that. I was like, yo, I want to be one of those girls going up, because whenever they visited home, like during the Christmas break, and they had on their gear from the universities and stuff, we were all looking at them like, yo, you look cute, you look cheap, you know, we want to be a part of that. So we were really inspired by that. And I think that really helped to lean more towards track and field. And my successes as well on the track helped to keep me motivated, to know that I made the right choice. Having won a silver medal at boys and girls champs in the 400-meter hurdles, as well as making national teams and winning medals in the 300-meter hurdles then, and then 400-meter hurdles, as well as the 4x4s. So it was easy. Like I said, the successes really helped to keep me motivated. And for me, and I always preach this, I've always known that in doing sports, success isn't only about winning. You know, we paint a picture that success is all about winning, being on top of the podium or being on the podium. Yeah, that it sets the tone, but for if you know that, you know, where you're coming from to where you are in terms of your times, your distances, etc., that's success for you. Because you have people who are winning and they're not meeting a lot of their targets, whether through achieving the personal times that they would want, you know, doing it the right way as well. So you have to learn to define your own success in sports. And I think doing track and field for so many years really helps me to be able to know that everyone's success looks different, even when they're on top of the podium or not.
All right, thank you so much. And then, okay, so the last thing I want to find out is, like, how did you make the transition into sports journalism? When did that happen?
Oh, wow. So I went to school. I went to university and I studied early childhood education. I love children, and really started to specialize in disabilities and the cases where, you know, children are molested in homes and they would maybe have to go into a home here in Jamaica. And then when I started doing it, it was so draining, because when you started hearing the stories, it started to break my heart. I was like, you can't walk away. You know, people say, oh, leave work at home. As an intern, I was like, no, you can't. It's so tough, because you see the cases, you hear the stories. So I was like, I don't think this is really for me. One day I saw a friend of mine and he's like, oh my gosh, you know, I love how you are always talking about NFL and sports on social media. At the time before Elon Musk come and change it now to Twitter, to X, it was Twitter. And you know, Facebook was hot back then, but I was always talking about the NFL. I love the NFL. And of course track and field. So when I started doing that, you know, he saw me the time on the bus and he was like, oh, I know something that would be perfect for you. It's not in line with what you did in university, but I think you'd be so ideal for this opportunity. So I got the break in 2012. I started out as a track and field analyst, and then at KLAS. So when I was at KLAS, they realized, oh, but she's really good in all sports. Some I'm better at that. So and then my supervisor, Sean Grant, he started inviting me to come and do analysis for netball, you know, for Berger Elite League, the Sunshine Girls matches, and the same for schoolboy football. And it just went on. And then I was like, okay, this was like for about 4 or 5 months. I was like, all right, since it's not becoming consistent, I just might be good at it. So I committed myself and I said, all right, let's not just do it as an analyst. Let's kind of put a little more effort in. So just in case. And the just in case turned out to be that February the following year, when it would have been Gibson Mapuk relays at the stadium, he called, and then netball matches and so on played. He called. I was like, oh my God, no, this is becoming a real thing. What do I do? You know, so I just started to make sure I prepared myself, did the necessary courses and so on. You know, and like I said, just always working, educating myself, and the rest is history.
All right, thank you for sharing that about got into the industry. So I'm gonna dive into, you know, like the topic that we decided to discuss, which is how to tell compelling sports stories. You are good at this. As I said, you're an award-winning journalist, and also if anybody here is following ISSA or even Trishana, you see her style. You know, she really has a way of connecting with the athletes. But how do you choose like topics for storytelling? How do you know when something is gonna be good?
Wow, that's such a tough question. How do I know? That's tough. Let me tell you though. It's just like how we started out with this discussion, and me sharing a little bit about who I am. And I would have heard, I think it was Ruth and Arthur that signed on and was saying that she's sick. And so for me, it's like, I don't know. It's KFC don't give out their ingredients. Me telling you still not. I don't think it even it gives a clarity to it. But for me, I watch so many sporting events that I'm always inspired by something, and I watch enough movies to know that you can draw perspective.
Yeah.
From it. I watch multiple sports. I'm never one that, because I did track and field or because of my love for netball, I shut off there. No, I watched the NFL. When I started my YouTube channel, for example, I started something 2 years ago, behind the scenes of sports in Jamaica. How I got that idea was by watching the NFL Hard Knocks.
Right.
And I was like, I wonder if I could do something similar to that in Jamaica. It would have been tough because of so many lack of resources, etc. But I started it in my own way, and people love it. When I did, for example, menstrual cycle, which became a huge hit across the Caribbean, I think we spoke about that, was because of my own struggles with my menstrual cycle as a former athlete. And I know a lot of women athletes struggle with that. But there are so many other stories, I think, online, that were done in pieces. It's always a taboo topic that nobody wants to talk about, and it has never been spoken about in Jamaica or the rest of the Caribbean. So when I went ahead and decided to be big and bold, and and bring that topic forward, you found that even the following day you had fathers who were calling and male coaches saying, we really love that story.
Yeah.
We too sometimes struggle to deal with it as coaches, as male coaches, which is why we always love to have the female managers around, etc., to help guide. So I think that's one of the ways.
So okay, so like for example, a topic you just said, menstrual cycle, which is hard to talk about. It's too sensitive. How do you choose questions and try not to? How do you know when you're not stepping, or if you're stepping too far? Overstepping. What's the sir?
I think by now, Andrew, you'll be a little bit familiar with who I am. So while I ask questions first. That's always my thing. I think everyone that works with me will tell you that. I'm an ask question kind of journalist. First of all, I'm an ask question type of woman. I don't assume.
Before you do a story, before you do an interview, you will just have a discussion with them. That's what you said?
Okay. Yeah, to ask, that's the first thing. You have to ask questions. When I say to Andrew, so which school you went to, which year you graduated? By that time, with me asking Andrew which year you graduated, for many people, they start shutting down because, I might be with age. Andrew might not be that way. I don't care if people know that I'm a grown woman. But there are other women and other men who don't like that. So the minute I go, which school you attended, which year you left, they're thinking, she's aging me, or but you would have had a discussion before to know the level of comfort of the discussion you can have with Andrew. As well as you can say to the person that you're going to do the interview with, tell me something that you would not be comfortable talking about.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised that by you asking that, it now allows them to ease and trust you, and something will happen along in that interview where they maybe start opening up, and you're like, but they said that we shouldn't ask that question. But because you have asked the question to say, what are you comfortable with or not comfortable with? They see that you care, and that's the first line of business. And I think when you look at traditional media over the last couple of years, that's something many people complain about. It's like you come across insensitive.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to think of those that you're trying to bring a story about. And once you do that, I think you get the best of that individual.
So tell me this. Okay, so is it that you find a topic and you then say, okay, I'm going to focus on this topic, and then you go and look for athletes that will help to bring the topic to life? Or is it that you see an athlete and then you're like, you want to build a story around this person, and then you try and find an angle? How does it go usually?
Okay, so for me, it's both.
Okay.
For me, it's both. And so you have, when I did Eastern, the struggles of sports in the Eastern end of the island with sports, I thought of the topic, and then I identified the schools, and then I took it from there. But then I went to the National Stadium recently, and I booked up in an athlete and the coach, and I was like, oh, but minister, I don't recall seeing anything about these two. And then I asked if I could do the story on spot, but I kept it short. As again, I'm like, what do you want to talk about though? Because at this time of the season, just to get a feel of where they are mentally. And I said, so I can do something really short. And they said, sure, no problem. And it was a hit when I did it, even though it was short, So again, they said two things can be true. So in my situation regarding storytelling, you can think of the topic, and then you go into identify who you want to be a part of the story to maybe bring it to life. Sometimes who you have in mind, they might tell you no, but then you go to the next place. You don't allow that to really shut down you doing the story.
Question. So when you're in the moment, you're at the game or the track or whatever, and you see an athlete you want to interview, do you always get permission from the coach or not always?
Okay. I am blessed.
High school athletes.
I am blessed and I'm privileged at this stage of my career that an athlete or a coach, they trust me.
Right.
I've earned that through my work. There is no work that I've put out for anybody to say I'm gonna deal with them sideways. I'm gonna bring something out that makes them look stupid. So a lot of times where teenagers are concerned, I do oftentimes I go first. If I see them, I said, where's your coach? If the coach isn't around, or where's mommy or daddy? And then I will say, can I speak to the athlete? And like I said, that oftentimes I don't have the grant permission to do so. But I do, once they're under 18, oftentimes I try to find the parent, guardian, or the coach. If not, because of how sports is, and they maybe just finished competing, you can grab them. But at that time, I don't really like doing that because you don't get much. Because it's a quick, how you felt about your performance versus wanting a story. So the minute I want something deeper than the time that you just did and the laps in the pool or on the cricket pitch or whatever, I then go to the coach or mommy or daddy if you're around.
Okay.
Or let me add this again, trust is important. You can too approach the athlete, because remember, if you're thinking of interviewing Jessica or Abigail, the onus is on you to also make them comfortable with you. They might be under 18, but remember that children now aren't like children back then. So I often say to them, Abby, would you be okay if I do an interview with you about so and so? And if she said yes, I said, okay, I'm gonna speak to your coach or mommy and daddy, and I take it from there.
Okay, so obviously that's also not a challenge, but a consideration. Are there any other challenges that you have in trying to put together a story? Tell us a bit about what
some of the challenges.
Yeah.
So our athletes are evolving. They're still cultured into the Jamaican mentality and the Caribbean mentality, and not in a bad way. We just feel like so with the right hand no, or people paralyzed, but the right hand no, the left hand nothing no. So it's a fine line of your approach. So you find that they will tell me something off the record or off camera then, and they sound so alive off camera. But then the minute I say, okay, so can we talk about this? And sometimes they'll say yes, but that vibe I got in just their raw element, it's not coming out in the interview, right? And it sometimes as a journalist and a content creator, for me, I'm like, all right. So I always say, what you did before, you do it again. But then it now also have to be from my end. I have to throw back that question and that vibe as well, with hope that they will give me in return. So that's some of the challenges. And I think that when you look at, I'm not bashing anyone, but when you look at a lot of our spaces, people want to ask Alika, Ruth, and Abigail, and Anika the same questions, but they're all different athletes. Why would you want to pose the same question to all? And then, because we're so caught up, which we should be, but again, while we're so caught up on the English language, when we find that Ruthan isn't answering like Abigail or Alika isn't answering like Jessica, everybody starts to front up and say, you rowing talk, you should talk. Your job is to make sure that you are asking a question to an athlete or a coach or a manager, etc. that they are capable of answering. And I think with doing that, in my view, it's tough, because remember that you're encountering so many different people on a particular day as an event.
Yeah.
You have to lock in to realize, like, okay, so Jessica isn't like Ruther isn't like Abigail, but together they might be good. What am I trying to achieve? So it's that's the toughest part for me of the job, and I treat it delicately because I respect that everyone isn't the same.
I understand. So you said, well, you spoke about specific to Jamaican sports. How do you tell? I'm gonna change gears a little bit.
Sure.
How do you tell a story on a topic that's already been, or is, you know, already done?
All right. So again, like I said, you know, and I want everyone on here to remember, you see, reading is powerful, and I'm a student at my craft. Even though I started out, like I said, as an analyst in 2012. I became a full-time journalist just in 2017. I'm a student as I sit here. It's my craft. I respect it, and I'm never in a hurry. I don't ever think that the space is leaving me for nothing. I read, I watch videos, and I observe. I say that to say, when I did, for example, you remember that racial thing with George Floyd, where the police officer, I think, stood in his neck or kneeled in his neck and he died. And I did that topic about racism and how athletes, you know, here maybe experience such, or what they are called. So you even if a topic is already out there, you'd be surprised that, you know, there are athletes or someone here that maybe experienced it but never spoke about it. So it's just a matter again about you know, reading. If you read, you'll know that, okay, for example, we might have a footballer living in this country, or played in this country, or playing actively in this country, or a country that might be similar with the same kind of the people having the same mindset or similar mindset. So you can maybe reach out to that athlete and say, have you ever experienced so and so? Some might want to talk about it as well as some won't. But again, even though the topic is already out there, you can choose to pull people from Jamaica who are residing or would have played or are actively playing or training in these countries, and have that discussion to get their side of the story.
Thank you. Yeah. And then so you spoke about racism, and a lot of people say, you know, that's not a big deal in Jamaica, you know, it's prejudice and all those things, but it was a relevant thing in the online digital space, you know, at the moment.
Still relevant.
How did you, you know, looking at your target audience, you know, how does that impact how you decide to, or the topics you decide to tackle?
I think that our athletes, they travel the world. Some would have done so in previous years. Some are currently doing it. And I think because, again, sports is very dear to my heart. You know, it's very dear to my heart. So I treat it, like I said, very delicately. How these athletes feel to me might not be how they feel to others. And I respect that as well. And with wanting them to be at their best, we have to factor so many things in. But then I can think like that because I'm a former athlete.
Right.
But then, like I said, when I don't think that our athletes are any exception to maybe being booed or called names in these other countries. It might not be on a big scale where we'll make the paper or the news, but like I said, you find that it happens. And so, like, you want to give them sometimes that space if they want to talk about it, and really say to them, you know, did you ever encounter this? Or do you have or would have been around in that atmosphere when it occurred? You know, so there's so many ways and angles in which you can take it from, because you'd be surprised that, okay, they maybe were called the names or booed or things being thrown at them, but they maybe felt like in a locker room, in a changing room, on a training pitch, they maybe were treated unfairly because of their skin color or where they're from. So if you're reading and you're following, you'll know that, okay, this topic is hot right now. I wonder if we have any Jamaicans residing in these countries or countries similar to those kind of mindset, And you can reach out to them and say, are you experiencing anything like this? Are you able to talk about it? If they're not able to talk about it, you find that they will even say, oh, you can ask Azari, he might be able to, because he would have been here before, but he's no longer here. So he would be more open for that discussion.
Well, you touched on something earlier, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. I want to know.
Oh wow!
Give us some of the topics that are salient right now. That are, when I said you spoke about it before, you said women in sports is just an issue in itself, or like a topic in itself. Or in this, I don't know if you meant sports or if in the sports reporting industry. But what are some of the topics that are go-tos for you?
Topics that are go-tos for me. Sometimes I don't really. I'm not a trendy girl.
Right.
I'll see it, but then I watch how long it play out for me. Because my thing with trend is like the clothes, you buy them and you buy the stuff. It's like overconsumption right now. Everybody want to buy facials, and then it don't work for them, right? So you have to look at the trend and see if it is a trend, as well as how it might be trending now. Because a lot of people, I think nowadays, those online can really talk about it as well. Like a lot of things happening now, it was happening long before, if we're being honest. But because we're in a digital and a social media era, it's really coming more out front and so on. But it's really nothing new, a lot of the topics. So I look at the topics that are, it's not so much as trending, but what people become uncomfortable with. And again, racism is still at the forefront.
Right.
It's still at the forefront. We see in English Premier League, La Liga's Vinicius Jr. from Brazil plays for Real Madrid. He's still one of those players that's constantly in the spotlight for that. We also have Saka that plays for Arsenal from England. The minute he makes an error, he's on the front of the paper being chastised. Even if he doesn't make the error, and they're to lose, they find some way to spew it around him, maybe having an error in the game. You see, they will put like a monkey stuff, on his page and so on social media. So racism for me will always be at the forefront. Something that I think will it's trendy, but it's not. It goes on and off, depending on the group that will talk about it, and that's women's salary.
Right.
In sports, which is why I think Serena Williams' husband coming together to put together that track meet, that all women's track meet, and to ensure that the women were paid handsomely, was a big hit. That's September month. What else is trending? It's always money and racism in sports. In football, the rules. In the rules, and you can look at that. Those are stories. The rules that are always being changed in sports. Those who do swimming, cricket, football, etc. Whenever the rules is one this minute, and then next season it's maybe something different or something being added years to come. It can have impacts, whether good or bad. We see VAR in football. In cricket, you can go look at the monitor and so many things. So, like I said, when you look at those are topics that something you can pay close attention to and really get the feedback from athletes. So, for example, in track and field, perfect example is that false start rule. It's still something spoken about whenever the track season come around. One false start and you're out, as opposed to before athletes would their false start and they would be able to compete still, maybe under a yellow card, but you weren't just thrown out at the point of one error. And you find that every track season, people talk about that. When it happened to Usain Bolt, in my opinion, and Usain stayed, Usain not moved, he would have been, they wouldn't have thrown him out, but he did. And he was told that he had to come off. That's, I think, back in 2013. So, like I said, these are things that each season, every season for sports, you find that the topics vary and they come around. But money and racism are two of the biggest discussions.
Are there any big discussions in high school sports? Like, I'm gonna bring up what happened the other day. There was a incident where the students either threatened to or had beat up one of the referees.
Yeah.
For safety and security, is that like a constant As a former athlete, did you ever experience, like feeling unsafe at these events or anything like that? And
Um,
how does that affect an athlete? And is that a topic that we should be considering?
I think okay. So let me start on the one in particular about the yellow the player and Vincent. I think that I'm big on discipline. I'm very big on discipline, and the topic that always needs to be had is about in making sure that police officers are at the game, right? Because every child that is competing are coming from so many different homes, not because they're a part of a team, automatically dismiss their behavior issues that they might be having. So if you're to have the discussion, one should always be about discipline. We have to ensure that our boys and girls who are participating, just in general, should be disciplined, but those who are participating and representing their schools should remember that at all times remain disciplined, whether to your other peers, your teammates, and especially to adults. So for me, again, the discussion should be about, them ensuring that, but also we have to insist on ISSA and the schools or anybody governing the matches on that day, for example, there is police officers there because that's their job. They help in those instances because when you looked at that incident online, there was no police officer there. It was just, adults running to the rescue or spectators. You can't have that. So the discussion again will always have to be about just similar to how ambulance is required to be at the match without an ambulance on the scene. Things should not be taking place because just in case of an emergency, may his soul rest in peace. We saw with Dominic, we saw the recent referee as well, that passed away at that match by Alpha. So these are the discussions that we should be having to make sure that ambulance, police officers, security measures are always in place and health and things for health as well. Defibrillators can be on site just in case of an emergency, could be an asthma attack. So it's not so much for me as just about, those players only, but it's something that we should be instilling about discipline, but also making sure that to reinforce the discipline, we have the correct bodies on hand.
I mean, strong point there.
Yeah, and then now regarding the overwork issue, with athletes, I think people constantly talk about burnout. Well, I think people lean towards a lot of that with track and field. I believe that a lot of athletes suffer from burnout, but the burnout for many people, they think it's physical, when in fact it isn't. Our students have to study harder than I think most students in high school worldwide. Our academic curriculum requires so much of them. By the time they're to finish a sporting discipline and get home, eat dinner, study, do homework, it's a lot. It takes a lot and it takes a toll on them. You have those student athletes as well as regular students in schools that are so exceptional that they will do well regardless of their circumstances. But then you have those who need a little more. So whenever people talk about the overwork for athletes, yes, it is possible, but I also don't believe that it's only the physical aspect of it, but more so everything that our youngsters have to go through. And in Jamaica, they don't think that it's changing in some households. Teenagers do have a voice. I believe that you can listen to them, hear what their cries are. I mean, as adults, you take vacation and by the time you go back to work in 1 week or 3 days, you're exhausted. Why shouldn't we lend and remember that our children, with having to do a lot of schoolwork, it takes a toll on them as well. Their tasks are a lot. And that's not just in the classroom, but with them doing other extra curriculum activities.
That sounds like some good discussion with athletes for like interviews as well. How do you balance everything? And
I mean, it's tough for them. If you're to listen to them, I've asked that question before to many athletes, and I have it even on my social media pages. And they tell you it is hard. It is really hard. But again, every household is different. And a lot of times you have to grant them grace and you have to help them. They're going to fall short. It's like you being at work. You and I and Jessica, it takes a team for this to go as though it is at the moment. And if you were not able to, Jessica will have to maybe push on for two. It's the same thing with our teenagers. We are hard on them because we're grooming them to become young men and women that will grow up into society. But while doing that, we can't teach them to just be all independent to do a lot of things. We have to show them that with assistance, whether from parents or other siblings, etc., you can achieve much more. And I think that's something I want to see more of our student athletes. Again, every household is so different. Some are not able to for various reasons, but for those that can, I always encourage parents to hold their hands a little bit. Some mornings, nothing wrong if them run late and go to school because they're exhausted. Similar to how you go to work and you're exhausted. So the same thing just sometimes have to be lent to our children.
Okay. So this is personal as well. I'm gonna go with personal. I want you to share with us when you started journalism. What did you identify in yourself as some of your weaknesses, and how did you overcome it?
My weaknesses. That I'm an introvert.
Really?
Yeah. But I'm an extrovert for my job. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. But I think so. I think I don't talk about this a lot because people won't understand. But I'm like, if I didn't have to be here, mind you, I do this for, it doesn't feel like work. That's the first thing. It doesn't feel like work. But I like watching events. I love going to sporting events. And I like watching from a distance. It's like I get this whole clarity and I'm like, yo, who is that? She look good in the pool. She look good on the pitch. Oh, look good on the track, So I'm not an introvert, but I think slightly because I'm really locked in a lot of times. And if I don't have to be outside, I'm not. But I think that's what it showed me. I'm a slight introvert. Like if I'm not need for the outer road and in a crowd, I'm not. How did I overcome that? I don't have a choice. It's my job. I have bills to pay. And I love interacting with the athletes and coaches. So I'm like, it's not something that you're taking home with you. They're not coming home with you. It's 24 hours in the day. Tough up, get out of your element and do what you have to do and call it a day, but be the best in that element. Weakness again. I think initially it was more, okay, so I'm a former athlete, right? So I had to figure out quickly a balance because a lot of my friends at the time were still competing. So I had to figure out how to carry stories without sometimes leading on my friends them for stories or for them to be the subject. All I did that was to, remember that every athlete, everyone, first of all, has a story to tell. And I think the minute I did that, I was good to go. I always remember everyone has a story to tell. Some want to tell the story. Some don't know they want to tell the story, as well as some don't want to tell it. Right? So you have those who want to tell it, but don't realize. But with your approach, they'll be like, oh, just by discussing and talking, they realize, oh, there's something to talk about. And then you have those that really don't want to talk about. And you have those who are willing to tell the story, but they were maybe never approached about it. And I think the minute I remember that, again, outside of just my friends that are competing, there's a story to tell with these athletes. That was good to go.
All right. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that we need to discuss right now?
I think I told them they have to read, right? I made note of that. And my favorite thing is, I don't know if he was able to join. I no longer call him my producer. It's like my right hand. I have two right hands and two left hands. Daniel Blake, right? He worked with Jamaica Observer for print, but for 4 years he was our producer. Karen Madden and I, when we had Girls Sports Club, he was my producer. But he's so good. And I say that to say I am a ask question woman, like I told you. But the important thing is to always ask questions to help you, whether in school or in your career. It's important to ask questions. Whenever you ask questions, you'd be surprised the information that you acquire just by asking questions. That's one. 2, ask for help. I cannot preach this enough about asking for help. You must ask for help. You'll be surprised by asking for help in storytelling, how different it can shape the story. Because sometimes before I do a lot of stories, then while in full-time journalism versus now, then I would ask questions. No, I still ask questions, and it really helped to shape a lot of my stories because you will have something in your head, or you want it to be carried out, or you want it executed. But then the important thing is for many is that they're like, oh, you can look at it this way. You can maybe do it this way. Daniel, Spencer Darlington, Karen, my entire crew. I don't have anybody in my crew that's not helpful. They'll be like, oh yeah, you can do it this way. and from what they would suggest as well as what I want to do. Because at the end of the day, you have to feel it. It's your story. You merge that together and you see, oh, okay, yeah, what Daniel said really makes sense. Oh, what Spencer says can work here, depending on the story. And I like to see my career as like I'm in a classroom again. I'm a student to what I do. I'm a student to my craft. I'm open to learning. I don't shy away from somebody telling me, oh, you could maybe do this. My youngest producer is 14 years old. That's my little brother. So a lot of what I do for football I started last season was really from his ideas. I told him I wanted to, but I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, you know? And he was like, oh, you should do it this way. You know, so you shouldn't shy away from who the messenger is as well, but ask questions, ask for guidance, even when you know what you want to do. Said to them, say, but this is how I thought I could do it, and then you see how best just by discussion. So make sure there are people that have good intentions for you. You can't just ask random people. You can't ask random people that just might land you not where you want. But ask people.
It sounds like you're describing an editorial board, you know, like everybody comes together with the editor and you discuss the ideas and all those things. You have that network.
I think though, because we're telling a story, you have to get a feel to what people want. It can't just be from your perspective.
Absolutely.
You know, so which is why I treat it that way.
So I'm now going to put something out there as well, because I know one of the resources that isn't first to mind, but is very important now, is the ability for us to have these discussions not only with our friends and fans, but also with AI chatbot or something like that.
Yeah,
is very, very useful in stuff like this, with kind of, you know, digging at ideas, coming up with ideas. So I want to encourage everybody. There's several different platforms that you can use. You know, you can probably copy and paste a piece of an article in there and then, you know, ask it to give you ideas on how to ask questions about athletes, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
and what others as well? I know Alexis was on the other day. Alexis, yeah. I before all of this, I was following Alexis since like on social media since about 2016. When I started taking social media serious, I still don't take it very serious, but that's a conversation we're not having. But I mean, in terms of, you know, so follow people who, not just in your field, but you need to be always inspired. Yeah. Because just like how sometimes you don't feel like getting up out of bed to go to work, your parents, or you might not want to go to school or go to training, you need something to keep you motivated. So I follow people that, you know, when they do things, I'm like, oh, that's so good, you know, or they look so good. Something you need something to motivate you, you know. So for me, that's also very big. You have to have something that's like-minded to keep you grounded and motivated.
That's such an excellent point. I do it as well, but in terms of my fitness journey, you know, I follow people who do the same kind of exercises that I do, and you know, sometimes I pop up on your feed and just like, yeah, okay, get it together, Andrew.
Yeah, and nobody feels like there's no one that want to do something every day, want to eat healthy the same, you know, every day. So you have to find, you know, something where people are being honest.
Yeah, I think it has been the one of the biggest benefits or positive impacts of social media, because I'm old enough to remember when there was no social media.
Exactly.
And if you remember, there was a phase or a little time when everybody was running. 5Ks were the only thing, and it really was. I had a running club, and I think it was attributed to now people were looking online at other people putting in the work and seeing how it's done. You know, you don't just show up at a 5K and expect to finish.
No.
And appreciation for that kind of work, even if it's gym fitness, if it is football, you know, like telling those stories really, really help motivate and keep people accountable.
Yes, it does.
So that's why I love digital media. I think that it's such a
it's a huge platform
for inspiring and for telling these kinds of stories, you know, behind the scenes, on the ground. So I mean, I don't know if that's where we can leave it, but like, if you have anything else you want to share, or we can.
You know, I will always remind everyone, and that's whether young or old, in anything that you're doing, especially the digital era that we're in, so it can be challenging. You feel as if you want to do what others are doing. You want to be like others because you see them doing it and you think that, But I will always say this, and it's something that I remind myself each time before I go and do an interview. I talk to myself. I already know I'm going to interview Alika, or I'm going to interview Janelle or Ruthan, and I say to myself, okay, so I know I'm going to interview them. Remember, Trishana, you don't lose yourself in the process, because you don't want to, you can sway because you're like, oh, that's the trend. No, this is what everyone is doing. So they're asking questions. Be you. Be you in everything that you do. And I think once you're being yourself and elevating yourself at all times, the best of you come out in everything that you do. You can repeat the same KFC, make them fried chicken and then fall the same way from John was a boy, and the lines are still long. They've stuck to their formula because they know what works for them. And I think that once we do the same thing, whether in journalism or life itself and sports, you find that, it will work for you. It will come. And like I said, remember, success looks differently for everyone. Winning is not just the only success that's out there. We're told that it is, but it actually isn't. Because if you are a better athlete or a better person than you were last year, that's very successful for you ending 2024. However, if you're in the same position that you were, well, then you have time to improve on that, and that's how you have to treat everything that you do. And remember that while it is important to always bring the topics to life and the persons in which you're talking about, it's also important to bring you alive in those stories. I was reminded about that by Daniel last year, I think it was, or earlier this year. I was doing some work, and he said, "Yeah, this was really good, but I wanted to see you." And that was a reminder. I mean, I'm doing this for so long, but he reminded me of that. So I always remind others of that as well, because you can be so caught up in the job, you can be caught up in the telling of the stories, and you lose yourself. But once you're coming out in that story, you'd be surprised how much more alive that story is, with including yourself in whichever way. You have to find the ways based on who you are.
Wow. I'm going to know. Thank you, Trishana. I'm opening up the floor to anyone who has any questions for Trishana. Or, yeah, please, you can unmute or you can type it in the chat box if you don't want to be heard. But we have a couple more minutes for this, so please go quickly. There are your questions. Ruthan, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so let me just get the questions here. One of my first questions here is, how you mentioned not having training that started as a teacher. What training or what programs did you actually do when you started?
So you have Karima.
No, I understand. I mean, the other courses that you did apart from university training.
Oh, well, I was fortunate enough. One, I went by CPTC, and that's on Arnold Road.
Yes.
They have good programs there to help, develop into interviews and stuff. I'm not sure if they're still doing it, because like I said, this was a long time ago, but I went to CPTC in 2013. And, again, with that, merging that with the help of Sean Grant at KLAS at the time, just guiding me how to go about a lot of things with sports, that really helped. But CPTC was really good in terms of how they train you, hold the mic, how to ask questions, and so many other things regarding journalism. But I'm not sure if they're still doing that, but they should be. I know that they're still existing. So yeah. I hope that they're still carrying that out. That's on Arnold Road. Arnold Road, that's just down below where the soldier camp, right?
Yes.
The soldier camp is, yes. And for those who want to do like journalism wholeheartedly, there is Karima. You have NCU that has a program. Yeah.
Thank you.
Those are the good ones.
I see you also answered Anika's question, but Ruthan, you had another question?
I always have my questions, right?
As you should.
Okay. Well, let's go to the bottom. How did you move into traveling for sports?
How did I move into traveling? All right. So, being a former track athlete, I went to Penn Relays for years. So that was something I always looked forward to. That's like on my calendar of events that I of fun times go to. And even as a journalist, I made sure that I put things in place to go. No, I do coverage for team. Huh?
That's self-funded when you travel, or are you?
Okay, no, for Team Jamaica Pickle, no. Team Jamaica Pickle takes care of it. I do social media stuff for them, as well as highlighting our schools that are participating on the pen relays. Then no, what other travel have I done? I've traveled with the Reggae Girls. With the Reggae Girls, I was asked to be their press officer back in 2022, and again recently. So I wasn't attached to a media. I'm not attached to a media house where I'm a 9 to 5 media house worker. And so they know that I'm very capable. I love the women's sports. I love Reggae Girls as well as Sunshine Girls and so on. I'm always lobbying for for them to get support and the women's football. So when they found out that I'm a freelance journalist, they asked if I was available to travel with the Reggae Girls in 2022 and again to France recently. And I was available, so I took up the offer.
How did you get on their radar? Was it through your online post?
I think through my work. And I like when people realize that I'm not attached to a media house, because when they're attached to a media house, at this stage it's good because the media houses do send you off to events. You have a lot of workers from the media houses. We see when Olympics, World Champs, Jordan Ford, Spencer Darlington, etc. They go to these events. Karen Madden, that was at TVJ. She covered the Women's World Cup. You have Adams from CVM that went to the Gold Cup. So the media houses do send their workers to these events as well. As a freelancer, I think a lot of it, like I said, it's trusted work. I don't have to be. Denzel Washington said in a recent interview that he has not auditioned for a job in 40 years. They call him and he gets the job. And I think because of the quality work that I've been able to do, when I was a full-time journalist and also as a freelancer, it has helped.
Thanks for it. So, okay, when you said because of your work, you specifically talking about what you've done on social media or what you've done? Okay, great.
On social media, yeah. Because a lot of what I do now, it's the space that we're in, and papers are no longer selling. People are no longer buying television. It's there, but I think TV is becoming like a decoration in houses. So you have to tap into the spaces and utilize the spaces that everyone is connecting to. I have a TikTok social media page, Facebook, Instagram, and X, Twitter. And I'm not one of those persons. I don't watch numbers. I have no control over when Andrew or Jessica logs on to something that I post. Even if one person watch, I'm good with that. I'm posting my work. My work isn't for people isn't for me to worry about how many going to watch. I'm not there yet. I hope I never get there. But I also make sure that I do good quality work because I love it. And when I put it out, great to see that I have the numbers, mind you. I'm really happy that people watch and support and they love it. But again, do good work. I believe in doing good work. On the days where you feel like, Lord, I can't bother, I'm not going to this might not. No. If that's the mindset, don't do it. Do good work. Because when that one bad work just might be the thing that sink your ship. And that one good work might be the one that carry you where you want.
Well, we have some really quality submissions by our participants that have been coming in, and I know we've graded the first batch, but we also were considering, Trishana, I know you have a million things going on, but we'd love your input and your anything that you can do to encourage, or we'll share those with you if that's okay. So I'm sure I would love to hear your side or opinions on what they're doing as well. We are pretty much out of time right now. I'm going to.
And I will close by saying, if you have a social media for somebody that doesn't like to post on social media, I'm still going to tell you all. It's a constant battle between myself and Danielle about posting stuff. Post the stuff. Post it. Right? Make sure though, before you post it, if you don't feel good, don't post it. That's your sign. Don't post it. I'm not about being anxious about what you're posting. I don't get like that because, like I said, for me, social media is like a scrapbook, and the opportunity for me to put my stuff on there about the athletes that I've spoken to, I look forward to it. But for those who are really, really into social media like that, if it's something that's going to make you cringe, don't post it.
All right. some nice last words from Trishana. Anyone else? Okay, what I will do now, thanks everyone for joining. We have just a little bit of more time. We can do some housekeeping. If anyone has any questions or concerns, I know Smart Term was giving some issues before, and Jessica is able to assist with that, or she's trying to, with the team at Smart Term. But if you have any other questions about what's going on in the program and what's required right now, feel free to drop in the chat. Trishana, I want to say thank you so much on behalf of everyone here. This was a very enlightening discussion.
Thank you so much. I'm available to you anytime.
I appreciate that. We really do. So we're going to keep in touch. We're already brainstorming the second iteration of this program.
Yes.
We want it to be bigger and better for everyone involved. So we will be in touch. And
Looking forward to it.
thank you. And I'm just going to go ahead and for the next 2 minutes. Okay, so when